Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Folks, I just wrapped up an incredible conversation with someone that I hold in a very high regard, who has taught me so much about how to treat your customers, clients, and fellow humans. I am honored to share with all of you my interview with Will Guidara. He may not be a household name, but if you're a New Yorker, you might be familiar with the legendary 3 Michelin star restaurant 11 Madison Park, known not just for its best-in-class food, but iconic for delivering extraordinary hospitality through its relentless campaign to spread joy. But there's so much more to our convo. From discussing the concept of unreasonable hospitality and the importance of managing expectations, we dig into Will's background in the hospitality industry, his experience working with renowned chef Daniel Boulud and Danny Meyer, the acclaimed restaurateur, and his time at 11 Madison Park, taking it to the top restaurant in the world, 4-star New York Times, and 3 Michelin stars. And he shares his insights on hiring the right people, creating a culture of caring, and making it cool to care. Folks, this is a good one. We talk about the significance of finding purpose in your work, accountability, self-awareness, personal growth, and so much more. You're going to love all of this. This is a good one. So buckle up and get ready for one of my favorite podcasts in a long time. Let's do it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Don't worry, I'm not going to play the whole song, folks. We're not going to play the whole song. I just wanted to evoke that quick little smile and smirk and acknowledgement from my guest today, Will Guidara. Will, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you so much, man. By the way, you don't even need to hear the whole song. You know what it is already. If you've ever heard the song, right there.
We'll give it a second here for everyone out there. I mean, but could you see the graphic on there of the cover art of this song?
Golly, it's like a warm bath on a cold day. This song.
It just feels good.
If you don't feel enveloped by this, you know what? I question your humanity.
We question your humanity. Let's get that out of there. Well, welcome to the show, man.
Dude, I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Likewise. And hopefully everyone listened to the intro I recorded after I do this. But if you don't know Will, you will certainly after this. So let's get to it. I really, I spoke about it before. I can't read every book of every guest. I just don't have the bandwidth to do it. I try to do my best as possible. But this one hit home for me in so many different ways. I grew up in the world of advertising, account management, and this concept of unreasonable hospitality, it comes down to managing expectations. Overseeding expectations, under promise, over deliver. We're going to get into that today. But before I do that, one of the things that I love to discuss with all my guests are their roots, where they come from. And I'm literally going to read the entire book to everyone here, and Will's not going to say anything here. But I want to talk about your parents for a little bit. I absolutely love their love story. The fact that your dad had a crush on your mom since 4th grade. I mean, that's a classic love story, man.
Dude, it's pretty wild. Yeah, so my dad and my mom, they went to grade school together. And as they told it when my mom was still alive, she never really knew he existed, and he had this crazy childhood crush on her. And that became apparent because she left her some stuff with her family. She moved away after 4th grade. My dad thought he'd never see her again. But my dad went on to be a stewardess, which is what they called flight attendants back in the day for American Airlines. And my dad, who has been in the food industry his entire life, went to work for Sky Chefs. And Sky Chefs was the company that American Airlines owned.
The catering.
The food. This was back in the day when food was actually good on planes.
Oh, man.
Gosh, we could do a whole podcast on
that.
I
was literally about to say we have a whole separate podcast on that. There is one Delta breakfast that I like, but we'll save that for another story.
And one day, my dad was organizing the loading of food onto the plane, and someone said to my dad, "Hey, there's a stewardess up there who speaks the same language as you," referencing their thick Boston accents. And gosh, my dad still has a thick Boston accent. He says popcorn, popcorn. Um, and he went up there, and it was my mom. And the
And they were
way
both
he,
engaged, right? They were
they
both
were
engaged to other people.
they were both engaged to other people at the time. The way he tells it is he like very quickly remembered who she was. Who knows how much of that is over dramatized, but she didn't recognize him at all. But then they fell in love. They broke off their respective engagements, and
Hmm.
here I am.
No. They were happy at home and they shared a ferocious work ethic as well as an intense sense of pride in their career. So you had that influence at home. You
Mm.
had that work ethic. Did you always know that you were going to go into this hospitality world, like from that early age? Was that just the course that was charted for you?
I mean, man, my mom. The tragic part of the story is that when I was 4, she was diagnosed with brain cancer. And without getting into all of the details, that ultimately rendered her into becoming a quadriplegic. And, through that and watching my dad, like, rise to the challenge like a superhero. I mean, he would, he was working restaurant hours. So, like, we're talking 14 hours a day. He would wake up,
Right.
get her ready, shower her, put her in the wheelchair, get her ready for the day, go off, do restaurant hours, come back, do the whole thing in return, still be a good dad to me. I mean, my dad was my hero. He is my greatest mentor. He continues to be my best friend. And
Oh
from an
man.
early age, man, like, I just wanted to do what he did. It didn't matter what he did. It just so turned out that going to work with him on Saturdays, because I'd always go to work with him on Saturdays, I fell in love with restaurants. I fell in love with, and by the way, I never wanted to be a chef. I always wanted to be in the dining room because I fell in love with the controlled chaos of dining rooms, the frenzied orchestra of dining rooms. And like this fact
I
that
feel
even
like
as
you're
a
reading me
young
the audiobook live right now. This is great. I'm
but
this is
like no, but it's true. Like here's the thing about a great dining room. Like every one of life's interactions is happening within the same 4 walls at one time. And I think there's something so beautiful about that.
it's a dance.
It's a dance, but it's like,
It's a two-way dance.
well, you can look over there and someone's getting engaged. Someone over there is breaking up. You can look over
Oh
there,
man.
someone's signing
It's
a deal. You can look over
drama,
there, someone's
comedy.
company's going bankrupt, right? It's like the highs and the lows all happening simultaneously.
Ah, I love it too. And I wouldn't classify my wife and I as traditional foodies, but we live through experiences. For example, for our anniversaries, we don't buy each other gifts. We take turns every other year going out for dinner. So our first year anniversary was my turn. I started, and we had the full Eric Ripert Le Bernardin experience, and that for us was our first real like holy shit.
Yeah.
And the funny story about that one, my wife likes to tell. They sat us at the table, and one of the waiters came by and he put a little stool next to my wife. And she
Hmm.
looks over at me and she goes, is this for my feet?" And I go, "I think it's for your bag." I lean over, I'm like, "I think it's for your bag." And she's like, "Oh shit." So we
She had
continue to
already
do that.
kicked off her shoes and had her feet up on the stool.
And we've done it all. ABC Kitchen, traveling Wild Your Frames, WD-50 when it was open, and then all over the road. And one of our favorite experiences was Alma in Portugal. I don't know if you've been to
Hmm.
Alma.
I've never
And
been to Portugal.
what?
I've never been
We'll
to Portugal.
we'll sidebar on that one for a second there.
All right.
And we this idea of experience, this idea of just enjoying not just the food, but the entire. So I get it, and that's why this book really resonated with me. So you go to Cornell, right? You go
Yep.
to the one of the best schools in the country for that. And how did Daniel Boulud come into your life?
Oh, so Danielle, like one of the great chefs of our time. Anyone out there who doesn't know who he is, like one of the great French chefs. Restaurants like Danielle and Café Boulud and all these places. So I was in a class called Guest Chefs. Guest Chefs was a really, really cool class at the hotel school where it was broken up into 3 groups over the course of the semester, and 3 guest chefs would come up. And it was like actually playing restaurant. And by the way, I use those words with intention because I think one of the coolest things when you love what you do is you get to play the job. It's actually a game. I love playing restaurant.
I love playing podcast host.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm serious. Like once you
No,
fall in
I
love with it, it feels like a game. And what that meant there was that each group was assigned to one chef. On the other two groups' chefs, you either worked as a server or a cook. For your group's chef, you worked as a part of the management team. And every semester, one of the chefs was a really famous one. And ours was Daniel Blute, and that was the group that I was on. Now, I was in charge of marketing. That was my job. Um, but the thing was, you didn't need to market that dinner. Everyone in Ithaca was going to buy a ticket to go eat at Daniel Blute. So I saw that as an opportunity to just stretch my role in other directions. And so I felt like maybe my role was to market Cornell to
hmm,
Danielle. Um, and so I took it as my responsibility just to entertain them. And his whole crew came up the night before
you
him.
talk about the advanced crew coming in and
Yeah.
setting them up.
And so I took them out and we went out and had burgers and drank too much. And then basically, long story short, he loved me because his team loved me. And after the dinner was over, we threw a rager at my house on College Avenue.
And can I finish the story here
Yeah,
about
please.
the next? So they throw a rager. Use your imagination. There, how old are you? You're 20, 21 at the time, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
probably like 19 or 20.
you're
So
right.
yeah.
And the next morning, who's well, no, sorry, that night you come back drunk and whatever, and Danielle is rummaging through your kitchen to find ingredients and cooking up a meal for you guys.
Yeah, for like 150 wasted Cornell kids. He was making scrambled eggs and truffles and spoon feeding
What the
caviar to people.
like now you think about that experience, someone that you hold on this Mount Rushmore of chefs in your college, in your house cooking, like what did that feel like? And like, and you look back on that, you're like, there's something about that guy that I love that I'm going to aspire to be like.
Well, let me tell one more part of the story, and then I want to tell the lessons I learned from Daniel.
Please.
Because as a chef, I learned he is a chef, and I learned more about hospitality from him than almost anyone else, and that's not normally the case with chefs. Um, we had an amazing time together. He said, "Hey, if you're ever in New York, come see me at Danielle." My mother passed away the day after graduation, and I was moving to Spain
Mm-hmm.
10 days later, and my dad and I went to Danielle as he went to drop me off at the airport in New York on my way to Spain. And I emailed Danielle to make the reservation. I was nobody, Adam. I was a freaking college kid. I had nothing to offer this man. And yet, he sat us in the skybox, which is this
Mm-hmm.
table in a room that overlooks the kitchen, did like a 15-course menu. He spieled every course himself. Stayed until the very end of the meal, comped the entire
Spieled,
thing.
great use of spiel. I had that on my top
Spieled.
left bingo card today. Thank you.
Oh,
Cross that
really?
off.
There you
Cross
go.
that off.
Cross it. um, he
You're,
gave us, during one of the saddest seasons of my life, one of the happiest nights of my life. This is what I've learned from Danielle. Two things. You meet people where they are, and you don't just sit back and make them come to you. He was one of the most celebrated chefs in the world, and he went up there looking to pursue a relationship with a bunch of college kids and did that by just celebrating life in the way that we celebrated life, not expecting us to do it in the way that he did.
he saw you and came to where you guys were.
Yeah.
He didn't expect you to be bowing at the altar.
Even though in that relationship, that's counterintuitive, right? Given our respective roles in
Of
the
course.
world. And then in the way that he showed me such unfrickin' reasonable generosity, it showed me that you should not reserve your most generous gestures only for those who can give them back in return.
The value pendulum does not have to be equal.
Yes. And when you give more than you expect to receive, you end up receiving endless amounts in the long term.
That's a golden lesson. I didn't really understand. We're the same age, and I it took me in the last 15, 20 years to really understand what that meant. And I apply that to my relationships. I apply that to parenting, my parenting style. I apply that to my business too. And it's a mindset that that's what the whole book is about, right? Like, how do you take these principles and apply this to almost anything in life, any business, anything that you do?
My
So
dad would always say that, like, too
please.
many people keep score, that they only give to people if they feel like those people have given enough to them. But he said you should keep score, but in the other direction. Make sure that you are always giving more than you've ever received from anyone in your life. And if you are always giving more, then you can, like, sit comfortably in your skin. And that's how I've tried to live my life ever since.
I absolutely love it. And once we start kicking off the book into the career, I love the spoon story at the MoMA. But I also love how you talk about the folks that work there and how you engage with them. And that really hit home for me. What was that enlightening moment during that chapter of that season?
Hmm.
Right? There's chapters within seasons too.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, MoMA was amazing for me. MoMA was my first general manager position, right? Like, that was the first time that I had the keys. And
Even though it was a little shop, it was important.
it was the smallest operation in Danny Meyer's entire company, but it was mine. And
Yes.
and like, no, but you know that feeling, like, when you finally have your little piece of the world through which you can make your mark, and the first time you get it, no matter how small a patch it may or may not be, you better make the most of it. And I obsessed over every little detail. I think one of the things I'm actually the most proud of, I talk about the spoons a lot in the book, but one of the parts of my operation was the cafeteria, which is the part of a museum that is normally mediocre at
It's
absolute
usually a
best.
fridge with 3-day-old egg salad.
Yeah. But
Right.
that was my thing. That was my opportunity to make a mark. And I wanted to have amazing hospitality and amazing service at the cafeteria. And I recognized that the best and the brightest out there don't normally apply for cashier positions. And that's what it was. We had cashiers.
Right.
And listen, of the many things I learned from Danny Meyer, one of the things I learned was words matter, the power of language. If you articulate things in the right way, the impact can be extraordinary. And so I didn't call them cashiers. They had the role of a cashier, but I wanted more out of that role. And so I called them MCs, which stood for menu consultants. Because if you call a role a menu consultant, then it sets very clearly the expectation up front that they better know everything about the menu.
Mm-hmm.
And it had obviously the duality of being an MC, which is kind of a host and all of that. And simply through re-articulating the title of the role, it made very clear that the expectations were different. And we had some of the most amazing people in what would normally be considered a cashier role.
Well, so we're jumping ahead a bit, but you these are things that you touch on in the book where you're managing, you're setting expectations, you're managing expectations, you're trusting people to do things, and you're empowering them. I mean, these are all themes throughout the book. But Danny trusted you, and for me, there's a post-it, and I'll pull it off my screen here. I keep this post-it because this is the way I feel about my team: wild, unmitigated trust.
Mm,
And
I
this is
love
something
that.
I mean, I'm going to stick it back on. I might have to tape it at this point. But that's something I feel the people that I hire them because I trust them to do the job. And I'm going to give them all the tools and I'm going to empower them and I'm going to elevate them to be their best self. So when I read these parts of your book, I was like, yes, fuck yes. Yeah. Like this is like, all right, I'm doing something right. I mean, I have a lot of room for improvement. Of course, we all do. We're always a work in progress. But how did Danny empower you with that trust and responsibility?
I mean,
How,
Danny was always very good at that. Like, he recognized that the best way to ensure that his general managers would approach the job as if they owned the restaurant was to give them as much of a sense of ownership as humanly possible, right? It makes sense when you put it that way. It was especially true with me in that role, though, because we were opening the Museum of Modern Art at one time. The Modern was the very, very important restaurant downstairs, and I was running the redheaded stepchild upstairs. And so everyone's attention was on the Modern, which gave me that much more empowerment and autonomy.
gave you a little bit more breathing room where the eyes weren't fully on you. But
And
that's where
sometimes,
you
like, the best way to know how to do something is once you've felt the significance of receiving that thing. And so, Danny leading me in that way made it so clear that I should pay that forward to the people that worked for me then and then across every season since.
let's talk about that part of the book, the 95-5 rule. For anyone out there that has not yet read the book, would you mind breaking that down for us?
Yeah, so the rule of 95.5 is meant to, I mean, it's basically how I manage a business. You manage every dollar, every penny, in fact, like a frickin' maniac. There is no cost too small to overanalyze and pour over and to control to the absolute fullest extent, such that you can earn the right to spend that last 5% foolishly. And for people just listening, I did air quotes around
Audacious.
foolishly. Yeah, because it's not foolish at all. That
No, that's the
5% is,
point.
yes, that is where you actually create connections, leave lasting memories, show people that you care enough to listen and then to do something with what you heard that they can feel seen and celebrated. And it's all in that 5%.
Feel seen. That's another note that I have here. Feel seen. And the story, the core chunk of this book is the journey of 11 Madison Park. Your journey from going, oh man, we're only 50 top, we're 50 out of 50 to the journey of being a 3 Michelin star, 4 New York Times, and that's the ups and downs, and it's absolutely incredible. And there's like a zillion pieces here I want to talk about, but to be the 4-star restaurant for the next generation, setting expectations.
Hmm.
How do you balance setting it versus managing expectations?
Well, gosh, the words expect, I mean, they're
Well, and
so
the word itself
intrinsic.
is
Yeah.
intense.
I mean, okay, so I like to redefine the word hospitality every year or so. I think it's important when an idea matters to you that you do that because the better you are at articulating that idea, the better you become at compelling those around you to embrace it. One of my definitions of hospitality, it's about making people feel seen. Another definition of
And that's
hospitality,
not black and white, it's color.
and it's not black, and there you go. Another definition of hospitality, it is about setting expectations and then also about exceeding them. And so let me break down the difference in the two. Hospitality is setting expectations. Um, in leadership, that means communicating very clearly to your team where you are going and then inviting them to join you. It means communicating very clearly what the standards are and then consistently upholding them and holding people accountable to achieving them and celebrating them when they do. Um, I think way too often people skip the expectation setting part of leadership. They have a big new idea, they just start putting it into place without taking the time to set the expectations of their team around what's coming. Um, with the guest, gosh, setting expectations is, I mean, kind of just reasonable hospitality. There you want to exceed them.
Right. So you get to a point where 11, I mean, I'm fast forwarding because you've talked about this ad nauseum and anybody could read the book. So that's not where I choose to use my time on this interview. The story is all here. The 11 Madison Park journey is all in here. You guys could take that. But you get to a point where 11 Madison Park is known for exceeding expectations. And I'm going to get to
Yeah.
the Kochek story in a minute because that's one of my favorite parts of the book here that hit home with me. But how do you manage people's expectations when you're setting when they come in thinking the bar is so high? Right? And are there people that come in and just have a very great, amazing experience and like, wait, where's my fucking surprise? Right? Like I was kind of thinking that at the same time, and I never had the 11 Madison Park experience. That's one of the restaurants that we have not had the chance. But I'm like, so the word gets around the street. One of the top restaurants in the world, eventually top restaurant in the world. You're gonna have this experience there, and like everyone's expecting it. So
Yes.
how do you keep stepping up the game every single night?
I mean, isn't that what it means to be a top performer? It's that the pressure of exceeding expectations is not felt like pressure.
It's a game.
It's felt like this opportunity of every night you get to play the game. I think when you start to look at it that way, when you start to say, well, shit, how are we going to do this again? How are we going to exceed expectations? That's when you get seized with anxiety and fail, right? You look at some of the best athletes out
I
there,
was
like
about to say.
they're just excited to go play the game that they love.
I mean, look at
And
LeBron. 40
yeah,
years old, he's still putting up numbers, even though we're not going to talk
yeah.
about what happened. But like, but the dude gets out there and he plays because it's the game.
Yeah. And when you derive as much, and honestly, with hospitality, I believe it's more pleasure out of giving than the people do out of receiving whatever it is you gave, then it's not hard to rise to the challenge every single night.
Let's talk about people management here. And one of the pieces I love, you tell your story, this the story about your dad, his own platoon in Vietnam. It was kind of like a hodgepodge, but he saw the hidden treasures in people.
Yeah.
And that was a lesson that resonated with you when you saw your wine and bev guy and you elevated them, and you saw other
Mm.
folks within the restaurant too. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So, okay, there's this old adage, hire slow, fire fast, right? I think most people have heard it. It's meant to imply the idea you
I've
better
been
be
fired
really,
fast.
yeah. Well, take your time when you're hiring someone. It,
Of
like
course.
any person you add to your team, it, like impacts the entire team more dramatically than sometimes we think. And then if someone's like souring your culture, get them out as quickly as possible. My approach is hire slow, fire fast, but not too
And
fast.
and
Um,
hire the person, not the resume.
hire for sure. Hire the person, not the resume. If you do, no matter what you do, you can teach people how to do it. It's about hiring the right person.
Our intention was to usher a more elegant style of service, but I found if I hired people who had worked in fine dining, they already had too many bad habits. So we started looking for people with the right attitude and philosophy of hospitality. What was that question during the interview process to assess if they had the right philosophy of hospitality? Was there like a go-to line of conversation questions?
I mean, for a long time there was, and you already answered it before. It was what's the difference between service and hospitality? And I joke in the book that the best answer I ever got came from a woman I ended up not hiring. She said, service is black and white, hospitality is color. But eventually I got rid of the questions. Um, because, listen, I think there's so many lessons from your life relationships that can be applied to your work relationships and vice versa. At the end of the day, an interview is like 90% the same as a first date. You're basically deciding whether you want to spend time with someone.
Right.
And imagine if I showed up on a first date and like took out a piece of paper with a list of questions. There would be no second
There would be no second date, and no one's having dessert. That it's so funny
date.
too. As a recruiter, I always joke with my wife. I'm like, I go on sometimes 7, 8 blind dates a day. Men,
Yeah.
women, doesn't matter. I'll date anybody, right? Like it's like, right. And I say that because for me, I have to be like I am a natural extrovert, and I think that lends well to what I do from a career choice. But I have to break the ice with people. I have to loosen them up, and I have to get them to talk freely about themselves. Because if I'm interviewing somebody, most likely on paper, they have the skills that I'm looking for because I source them
Dude,
as a recruiter, right? But
that's what I tell people. If you are talking about like what experience do they have in the interview, you're missing the entire point. The fact that you're sitting down with them means they have what they need to do the job. Similarly to
I
what
wouldn't
you
waste
just
my
said
time.
before, I'm not going to talk about what's in the book. You can read the book. You can read the resume.
Yeah,
For me, an
stories
interview
here.
is about do they have integrity? Do I think they're going to work hard? And will the people who already work for me get along with this person? Because you can't change chemistry. It's either
No.
there or it's not.
How do you build a cultural bonfire?
Oh, so you're referencing in the beginning, and I think this is especially true during turnarounds. And so many people have tried to usher a turnaround within an organization where
Right. Something's not going well. Something's not feeling right, and you need to change shit up. You need to throw the knuckleball, right? You got to throw the
you need to
slove
bring
in there.
in new people with a new sensibility to move things in the right direction. And
You
in
got to
the
shake it
beginning, I
up.
kept on hiring one person at a time, and the people that already worked there would basically dim the fire of that person's enthusiasm. And so eventually, I just went short for long enough that I had like four people ready to start, and I started them all at the same time. And so each one of their individual enthusiasms like was mounted into a bonfire, something that could not be extinguished.
And that leads right into the next part where you talk about making it cool to care. Because like it's so many businesses out there, no one's going to care as much as the owner. No one's going to care as much as the C suite out there. making it cool to care and creating a culture of caring. Where did you misstep or fail in that process of figuring out how to make it cool? Did you try to make it
Like,
overly cool?
no, I think I tried to be cool. I think
Like Miles
where you,
Davis.
well, no, but like when a leader tries to do the things that will make their team think they are cool, they've lost the battle. Um, as a leader, your energy needs to impact the people around you, not the other way around. Like, I'm not there to be another friend to the people that work for me. They have plenty of friends. I need to, rather than trying to act in the way that they think is cool, change their perception of what is cool. And that happens when you are so unbelievably passionate about where you're trying to go and what you're trying to achieve and what right looks like, that your passion starts to infect the people around you, and suddenly that becomes what is cool.
Hey, everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
What I felt from this book, when you talk about the team building and figuring out what was working as far as like the signals, I mean, literally, if we're keep saying with this baseball analogy too, the hand behind the back, if the one's still sparkling, right? Like, so they knew it. Someone else would come in. And that whole concept of getting people on the same page, that had a very strong sports analogy. I mean, you look at winning teams and the camaraderie and the energy on that. That's what I felt from that. And that takes work. And that takes
Mm,
practice. And you guys break it. You break it down in the book, the work that goes into that. And one of the pieces I love, you really talk about the fan meal and how important that was. That's like a pregame.
yeah.
Again, that's the pregame. For anyone out there, talk a little bit about the what that fan meal is and how you evolved it and utilized that time as effective. It wasn't just everyone just kind of sitting around, but it was.
Well, okay, so one of the first things was a lot of restaurants, they do their daily huddle during family meals. So people are eating and then the manager starts talking. So one
And
of
they're
the first
just
things was break them into two pieces. Let your team actually eat and connect and develop friendships with one another, because honestly, the extent to which they are close and connected to one another is also
of course.
required for success.
And they're not required to
Don't,
be best friends, but the camaraderie is important.
yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, but it's awesome if they are best friends. I mean, there's data around that. People are
Oh, yeah.
much less likely to leave for a new job if they have a best friend at their
I can
current
only
job.
imagine the romance stories and the fight stories that you. I mean, it's a wild crew in the restaurant world. Anthony Bourdain. I mean, was my dude, and his. I mean, Kitchen Confidential for anyone out there who wants that side of it.
Yeah, that's the other side of the house and the
Yeah.
other side of the industry.
Yep.
Um, but then the daily huddle side, the pre-meal, that 30-minute meeting that we hold every day right before we open the door and welcome our guests. Most restaurants do it. Most restaurants waste it. They waste it by spending the entire time talking about ideas that could clearly be communicated via an email, a new dish, a new wine by the glass, a new policy. That meeting, dude, is such a brilliant opportunity for a leader to actually stand up and lead, to share moments of inspiration, to invite the team to do so in return, to I mean, listen, that when that meeting is done well, it's when the people you work with cease being a collection of individuals and come together as a trusting team. And that only happens when you're not just talking about the what, but about the how and the why, when you don't just focus on the things that will make your people better at their jobs, but on all the many things that will make them just better people. I think that I think way too many businesses skip out on a beautiful opportunity by not doing some version of a daily huddle. And a lot of other businesses who have not taken a fresh look at how they do it should really take another look.
Hot take on this: corporate America, working from home. Is that one of the core things that folks are missing here from working remotely? Is not having those lunch breaks together, not being in the office together. What's your a hot take on that?
I mean,
Are we missing
for
that?
sure. I think that, but by the way, I don't think it can't exist. The reality is that when people were all working together in an office, it would happen organically
Mm-hmm.
at lunch, at the water cooler, at happy hour, after work. Now it just requires the leader being more intentional in creating the conditions for connection and creating space and putting systems in and just being more creative.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So let's get back. I want to get the train back on track here. I just had to throw that one in there from somebody who knows this well, and it goes back to knowing why your work is important, and that's a key part here. And you talk about you took a call recently from a hotel grad, and he said, "I'm trying to figure out whether I want to stay in this horrible industry, yada yada." And then you say, "I told him pretty quickly that he shouldn't." And then you say, "You must be able to name for yourself why your work matters." That hit home for me, man.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
Or
I
why?
remember I was,
Why?
yeah,
Why?
exactly. Yeah, why? I mean, Simon Sinek was a part of this book, so
Oh, we'll get to that.
it's
Don't worry.
natural. I mean, the number of people who spend so much of their life complaining about how terrible their job is, it makes me wonder why they're still doing that job. And I know there's privilege in loving your work. I'm not taking that for granted. But I also, I mean, you look around at how many different people are hiring in so many different positions. When you're in that place, one of two things needs to happen: change your job or change your perspective. And oftentimes, you can be doing the same job this week and next week, but if you reframe your perspective, you can love it a lot more next week. If you just take the time to understand how the work you're doing actually impacts people in a positive way.
And
And by
that
the way,
comes
I think it's true for everyone. Like an accountant is not just crunching numbers; they're setting people up for financial not, for
financial sex is
financial
a whole other
success over the
podcast.
over the course of their lives. Right? Like you can go through
And
every job.
wait, can I ask you a funny question? Like,
Yeah.
was there a thing too with like you saw like an old dude with like a significantly younger chick, and like the guys in the back and ladies, that's definitely an escort. He's definitely taking an escort. That's not his wife. Like, I mean, there had to be some funny shit with that.
I mean, listen,
But
yes
there's
and no.
also
Like
privacy, right? There's obviously an element of privacy when someone comes in.
more than
Celebrity,
that
yeah.
though, man, like we had a pretty strict rule. You do not talk about people in the service station because no matter how hard you try, you're going to bring a little bit of that to the table when you return.
And you have to be mindful about mannerisms and interaction.
Yeah,
You're not
it
going to
can
look over
come
at the old
out in
guy
the
and wink him. You're not
smallest
going to wink
ways.
him. You're not going to be like, "Hope you're enjoying your meal. Dessert will be a lot better," right? Like you're not going in that direction. It's so crazy. Like the skill set of a top server and a top team, right? Like people, like I want to elevate the folks that work in the hospitality. They're not just waiters and waitresses. There's a passion, like especially in the hierarchy of fine dining too. It's an art form.
Mm.
It's equal parts art and science, and you do such a great job in the book here. And you talk about elevating with responsibility too, and you say, and I red line and blue line on this one over here. Often the perfect moment to give someone more responsibility is before they're ready. And in recruiting, I work with so many clients that like it's a director level role. We only want people who are currently directors. And I say to them, I go, why? That person's going to want to elevate themselves anyway. But don't you want somebody with that aptitude and attitude who's going to harness that energy and excel in this position?
Yeah, not to mention the fact that I think it's very, very hard to argue that the best cultures are not those where people are promoted from within, right? Like I think
Hmm.
most people would agree with that. Like if you have a culture of upward mobility where people rise through the ranks and you cannot have a culture of upward mobility where you promote from within unless you are giving people more responsibility before they're ready.
They go hand in
Otherwise,
hand.
you would never be able to do it because they'll never have the responsibility until you are the first person to give it to them.
And this came from your dad. The best way to teach, the best way to learn is to teach.
Yeah, he would do that when I was a kid. When I was trying to study something and I was having a hard time with it, he'd be like, "All right, tomorrow, teach me." And it's true. Like when you learn with the intention to teach or teach with the intention to learn, you get so much more out of it.
And with that, you get to a point in the book when you talk about sharing the spotlight, and I think that's something that great leaders do, and that's something. Whenever people talk to me about my intention with the podcast, what I'm doing here, and I said the goal of my show over the last 5 years is to shine a light on others, and that light reflects back on me in so many different ways. And I think so many leaders are ego and it's in their head and everything, but the real leaders that shine are the ones that elevate and really put that spotlight on others. And you really break it down well in the book out there. So what tip would you give for leaders out there who, are struggling?
Well, I think it's a confidence thing, right? A lot of people don't feel like they're successful unless as many people as humanly possible are out there, singing their praises. When the greatest success you can achieve as a leader is when everyone is out there singing the praises of the people that work for you. It means you've created a culture wherein every single individual can thrive. You know who's doing this like so well is I spend a lot of time with the guys who create The Bear, the TV show,
Oh,
and Chris Storer.
one of our favorites, absolute favorite shows.
Chris
Jeez.
Storer is like maybe one of the most remarkable leaders I've ever met. He is the Bear. This guy's created everything about the Bear is him, and yet he's not on stage at the Emmys. He's not doing all that stuff. When he's in the room, he has this quiet sensibility. Like he commands the best work out of everyone around him, and never, ever takes credit for the success. Anytime you ever say, "Hey, dude, you crushed that episode," he'll be like, "Yeah, dude, like." Honestly, Maddie was so good, right? Or Jeremy was amazing, or like he always redirects the praise. And out of this, like every one of those actors and directors on The Bear is huge now.
It's It's an unbelievable show. And I mean, is that what the Forks episode? Did you inspire that? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, that came out of the book. That whole episode.
I mean, so the first, in my opinion, I'm just going off here. Like the first season was good. It was cool. Like we loved it. It was interesting. But that last season, man, it was a masterpiece in storytelling. It was a book. It was so freaking good. And then at the end, when it wraps it all up and it sets you up for the next season too, it's I mean, that season should be held in the highest regards of all TV seasons, in my opinion.
You know what's so cool is all those Emmys they just won were for season 1.
Not even for season 2 yet. And then to your point earlier, when they're all on stage, the whole ensemble's on stage. It's not just the
That's what I'm saying. And Chris isn't even up there. He just wants them to get the spotlight.
So I want to make sure I get a point in here. We have a little bit of time left, and I want to talk about something that really hits home to me, and it's accountability and self-awareness. The two go hand in hand together on that. And this is a lesson I learned about 10 years ago. I was working over at VaynerMedia. Everyone knows my story. I was fired by Gary Vee, and I had a self-awareness epiphany, yada, yada. Everyone knows the story. But it was in that moment where I had to look in the mirror and say, shit, what am I doing wrong? What am I good at? What am I suck at? And how do I take accountability, own my loss, and move forward? And the part in the book that speaks to me about this is when you had this idea for the all New York menu with the New York story and everything. I'd love to hear a little bit about, like, in your head, did you think you had to think this is the best idea ever? Like, were there any doubts about it? Did you even have that like vision, like where the fail points could be in this?
No. Zero. I think that's why, by the way, I think that's why so many people do some of their most creative work early in life, is because that's before you've failed enough to even really be concerned about failure.
That's why most of the musicians, right? Most of the early albums are the classics.
Yeah. No, zero. I was 100%. I mean, honestly, a lot of the time I still am. And I think that's a good thing to hold on to in spite of past failures to the extent you can. But no, I was 100% confident that everything I was doing was 100% right.
So then the famous New York Times food critic comes in and has his meal, and as the story goes, he completely not the food.
The food was great.
He destroys the fucking story. He's like, what the hell? This is not the EMP experience. What is this?
He called it a Seder hosted by Presbyterians.
I mean, that is wordsmith gold, on that one. I mean, obviously he works for the New York Times. That had to be a fucking direct shot to the nuts.
Well, it was a direct shot for a couple reasons. I had built the culture at 11 Madison Park all around trusting and empowering the people on my team, and yet I became so maniacally focused on realizing my vision for this in exactly the way I had it in my head that I effectively made them memorize scripts to describe every single one of the courses. And it was in that exact decision that we got panned. My dad always says adversity is a terrible thing to waste. There was a dose of adversity, and the way I did not waste it was seizing on it as an opportunity to just publicly apologize to the entire staff about where I had gone wrong. I think way too many leaders think that if they don't own up to a mistake, people won't notice that they made one. But the most powerful thing you can do is own your mistakes, because A, everyone knows they happened, so just own them. And B, people will always be much more likely and willing to receive criticism from you if you're just as willing to criticize yourself.
And that goes back to also setting and managing expectations and seeing people where they are. It all works together. My word of power is tenacity, and I pay that off with persistence. And you have this hanging in your childhood bedroom and dorm room, and now it's hanging above your desk. And I want everyone, even if you don't read this book, I'm going to read it if you don't mind. Nothing in this world could take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men or women with talent. Genius will not unrewarded. Genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Like, that's what separates those who are successful. It's the persistence and the hard work. And I got that out of this book. I could feel your hard work in this book. I could feel your passion in this. How do you define success, Will?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, what you just said. Nothing I talk about in the book is hard. It's all about trying harder. It's making the decision to be audacious in your goal setting and patient in your pursuit and being willing to do whatever it takes to bring your vision to life. And if you are willing to do that, if you're willing to surround yourself with people who are just as committed to the spirit of the collective endeavor as you are, it is nothing short of extraordinary what you can accomplish.
I love that. And there's another element to that too, which is a key ingredient, is being present.
Yeah.
Right? Like being present in here. I often describe being present as caring so much about what you're doing that you stop caring about everything you need to do next. My highlighter ran out on the plane. I was on a flight back, and then I like literally you could see it like that. I was like, shit. And then I'm looking through my backpack on the plane. I had nothing. My wife's pen was broken, and like, look, I'm trying to like get the marker to work over here on this point here. But that one sit home to me because I am trying to be more present. I'm trying to be more present at home, and that obviously starts tactically with putting your freaking phone away. We have a no electronic rule at dinner. Being present in conversations, actively listening, because people notice. And that adds.
Do you know what I learned? You know what I learned the other day?
I'm listening.
Only half related. But there's all this data around if your iPhone is in black and white, that you're like dramatically less inclined to look at it.
Versus
and
night
you
mode?
Can go,
or just all black and white, everything.
You can go into your settings
and everything.
And if I click this button 3 times, my phone goes to black and white.
Pro tip.
And it's a really good pro tip. Try it. The other pro tip I have, because the phone is like kind of the biggest impediment to being present, is so you look at my the bottom icons, mail, text messages. There's no numbers there. So I took off the setting where it shows me how many unread emails or text messages I have.
Whoa! So you're not triggered by
yeah. Ooh, and so then so now look at how my phone is in black and white.
It's not drawing your eye to it. You're not focusing.
It draws you in less. Those 2 changes to your phone, I think, can be dramatic.
I also see we're aligned because we do folders. My wife does not do folders. Does your wife have folders on her phone?
She does, but she's less disciplined and maniacal about them.
Are you inbox 0?
I am. Right now, I have 4 emails in my
Okay,
inbox.
my wife, and I even thinking about and telling you this number gets me, it triggers me. She has,
What, like 33,000 or something?
yesterday was 43,827. And and she goes, well, once I got Gmail like 10 years ago, I just never delete. I'm like,
No.
and
That
that's why
gives me agita. That
that's
gives
why
me agita.
we're so good together. I'm going to jump ahead here. Like, two incredibly successful people living under one roof. How do you ensure that you create the space to always honor and support each other?
I mean, it's funny. Marriage is like a daily pursuit,
Mm-hmm.
I think. It's persistence and determination are just as important in marriage as they are in anything else. And I say that because, gosh, sometimes we do it so well and sometimes we don't.
We
Um,
can't bat 1,000.
yeah. But I will say um, that there is nothing I enjoy doing more than trying to support her in realizing whatever her dreams are. That is more fun to me than working on realizing my own.
Amen.
Um, but then the balance there is um, figuring out the right way to do that because I mean it's like a classic male female thing where I need to work hard not to try to fix things or tell her what to do, but just exist when I'm called into the game.
One of the things my wife loves about me, and I'm always happy to talk about it because my other friends or husbands hate me, is I surprise and delight my wife all the time. I surprise and delight her. I surprise her. I date one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got from somebody who was married for long: always date your wife, always date your
Yeah, date
spouse,
him
always date your
for
partner.
sure.
And it comes down to surprise, keeping it fresh too. Like, you're like, shit, how am I going to up myself every time to keep things fresh and exciting? And it's not about a grand gesture, but it's really about those things where you listen and you surprise and you delight.
For sure. Dude, are you kidding me? I
Yeah.
mean, that's my favorite thing in the world to do.
That's my
The
jam. I'll tell you something
it's
when we
my
go
favorite.
offline for a second. Yeah.
But like also my wife does not like clothes or purses or jewelry or anything fancy. Like anything fancy. And so it's really hard with her. Um the coolest thing I ever did for her, which I'm always like trying to up that gesture, was New York Times Magazine came out with this thing called Boxing Match. It was in the games section. It was like some blend between a crossword and Sudoku.
Right.
Christina is a workaholic. She's always working. But when that game came out, she fell in love with it. And for 2 hours every Sunday, she would sit down with a cup of coffee and lose herself in this game. And apparently, she was one of the only ones that actually liked playing it because 2 months later they stopped printing it,
Yeah. They have an
and she was
audience of one.
devastated. But so I've reached out to Will Shortz, who runs the games at the New York Times, got him to connect me with the guy who made the boxing match games, commissioned him to make me 52 more, printed them in a little book, and I gave her the gift of that game for the next year and a half.
I mean, but
I
that's
I could have
that
bought her a Cartier necklace. That it would have done nothing.
it would have
That
done
made
nothing.
her feel seen.
It's being felt seen, and sometimes it's small gesture, sometimes it's a grand gesture, but it's about the intention and the reason behind it. So I want to use, we have about a couple minutes left here. The coach check story is one that resonated to me too. When I started to tell people who I'm interviewing Will, and they're like, who's, and I told them a little bit about you, and then I started telling the coach check story to everybody, and they're like, why doesn't every restaurant do this? Because it's not that easy to execute. And Will, why is it? What's the hard part about executing this tactically? Well, for everyone out there, let's kind of break it down. Like, you go to a restaurant, you check your coat, you get a little ticket, you finish your meal, and then you're just kind of standing around waiting. Maybe there's a line for the coat check, and you kind of just standing there. So you have this great, incredible experience, and all of a sudden, you're not finishing strong.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I just said to the team, hey, I want to make it such that when people leave, we're just standing by the door holding their coats before they even get there. We give them their coats, they leave, and it feels like a magic trick. And the team said, how do we do that? I said, I don't know, figure it out. And they did. And it's complicated to explain, but 2 different coat rooms and connecting table numbers to the hangers and the whole thing. Nothing about it is hard. it just requires making the decision to try hard enough to bring the idea to life. That is the case with almost every idea. And it requires the notion that people on your team are capable of so much if you just invite them to the table and ask them to figure something out.
And that power too of characteristics I talk about. I want to hire people who could figure it out, and I want to empower them to do that and trust them. Going back to wild, unmitigated trust, we have an opportunity to improve something. We have an opportunity to surprise and delight our guests. Here's the idea. How would you guys go about figuring it out? And you talk about moving the podium and the reservationist and tying it all together, and the waiter signaling when you're in the final meal and moving the coats, and it's just there for them. And I think everyone
And it
could
all
apply that.
seems so complicated and so impossible, but when you really distill it down, it's not.
You're shifting
It
coats from
just
one room to the next with a notification of when to move it.
exactly. That's it. Like, and it's just we have an opportunity every time we walk into work or into life, honestly, to decide what matters to us and then decide to invest the time to actually excel at that thing. And we can't do everything at the level we want to, but we can pick our moves. And so I always like to challenge people, look at your world, find something you care about, try a little bit harder, make that one of your moves, and stand back and watch the impact it can have.
I love it. I'm going to bring it home here. You work with Simon Sinek on this book. What did he evoke in you that you learned about yourself through the process of writing this book? How did he inspire something that you learned about yourself during this process?
I mean, I never would have written a book were it not for him. I spoke at this thing that he was hosting, and afterwards he came up to me and said, "That's a book. You have to write that book." Um, Here's the thing. My dad always says, you're never too young to be a mentor. You're never too old to have a mentor. Let's focus on the latter part. I don't care what you've done, what you've accomplished, how successful, rich you are. Be open to the fact that you can receive mentorship from others because you might find yourself in a position where you've done so much in life and yet someone comes up to you and says you're capable of doing something else that you never thought you were.
Amen to all of that. So let's bring it home here. I think I know the answer to this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway because this is my masterclass. People could go back, go on the website, and there's 350 of these masterclasses. So I asked these two questions. Will, what is the single greatest piece of advice you've ever received that you take action on daily? There's my little spin to that.
Ask yourself what right looks like and do that. I got that from my dad. Life is filled with challenging decisions, but if you commit to always doing the right thing, you never have to make a hard decision again.
What is Will listening to these days? Music.
Let's see, music. I mean, I have a 3-year-old, so I'm pretty consumed with the
Cocomelon?
Disney. Yeah, no. Thankfully, no. Mostly Disney stuff. But
That's okay.
man, like the bands I love right now, there's a band called The Lone Bellow, Lonebellow. I think they're the greatest. Full stop. There's a guy who's been a really successful writer for a long time who now put out an album called Aaron Ratier that I think is amazing. I'm loving the podcast Acquired. I think that if you haven't listened to that, it's bonkers. It's so fun. Yeah, and then lots of Moana and Encanto and Frozen.
So let's bring this one home here. Well, you look back at your life, the complete journey to where you are today, and you think about those really hard, tough times where you had to dig down deep and harness that tenacity and pull yourself up. And now you sit here with gratitude for those you have helped lift up, those you've empowered, this life, this family, these kids. What keeps you on the right path? What is your compass? Will Guidara, what is your North Star in life?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't matter what you've accomplished. It's the next thing you do that defines who you are.
For everyone out there who wants the meat of this book, You could find this anywhere. I love that you go to the airports and you leave these little love notes. It's fantastic for everybody. You could find it on Amazon, Unreasonable Hospitality. You could find Will on Instagram. What's next?
I think that the best way for people to I'm working on a newsletter. I do it every 2 weeks, pre-mail, that I love.
Christina has a great newsletter. Big
Yeah.
club.
But unreasonablehospitality.com, you can sign up for that. That's been something I'm really enjoying doing. And, we're doing a lot of stuff, which you and I should catch up on soon.
We will definitely do that. Will Guidara, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fantastic episode. I got to be honest with you. I've been thinking about I've been thinking about this interview for the last 5 or 6 days when I'm trying to fall asleep at night, thinking about how I'm going to approach it, because you said in the beginning that you don't like traditional interviews, and I don't do traditional interviews, and I don't know why I overthought it, and I don't know why, because I knew it was going to be a great natural conversation just like this, but I also know I had to prepare, and I had to come in strong, and I had to do my homework. And Will, I want to genuinely thank you for taking the time to sit with me and my audience for the last hour, and I deeply appreciate you.
Dude, this was a blast, and I appreciate you too.
And everyone out there, if this show resonated with you, leave a review rating. It goes a long way. You know where to find out more at thepodcast.com. Follow us on all our social media channels. We deeply appreciate you. Remember, be good to yourself, be better to others, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.